What's up, Nerdyverse? I'm Daddy Louie, and in this video, we are taking a look at a game called Die in the Dungeon. So stick around. Before we get started, if you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure that you subscribe for more content and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any future videos. Die in the Dungeon is a game that was successfully kickstarted back in June of 2020 by Fundamental Games. It is a solo game for ages 12 and up and takes between 30 and 60 minutes to play. Now, a caveat to it being a solo game, there is one multiplayer variant built into the game to add an extra player, but at its core, this game really is a pure solo game. It is a solo dungeon crawl where you play as the monster trying to take on the heroes. So a nice role reversal there. Some dungeons will also have different objectives in them other than just clearing out all of the heroes and stuff. And each dungeon is different. It's kind of a semi-modular map construction. There's set maps in the dungeon guide, but the tiles will be different every time that you play because there's multiple tiles that you can shuffle up and choose at random. There is also a build your own dungeon guide, so you don't have to follow the set layouts that are provided for you. You can make your own. But is it good? Well, if you'll join me on the table, let's check it out. Okay, so here's just a sampling of some of the components that came with the game. There are a lot of components in this game, and they are really, really great. We don't have time to go over each and every single one of them, so we will talk about them as briefly as we can so we can get straight into the gameplay. So, like I said, the components are really great, and the art is really great as well. So once you select which monster you want to play as, you're going to get one of these awesome acrylic tokens. They're really, really neat. They've got the art of the monsters on them. There are a few to choose from, which is great. You also have a plethora of dice. These come in all shapes and colors. So you've got D4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 20s. And there are a few different colors, and you'll see why in just a little bit. You also have a printed die that has the different heroes on it. There are some tiles that tell you which heroes you're going to face, and there are some that let you randomize it. That's what this is for. You also have these teeny tiny D6s. These are for your experience that you'll gain throughout the dungeon. We'll talk about that more later. There's also some acrylic tokens, many different types of tokens in the game. I won't go over all of them, but the quality is really, really great. I mentioned that there are tiles. They're double-sided, so when it tells you that you'll need, 4 of these end pieces, for example, you'll shuffle up all of the end pieces that you have, and then, you'll choose some. And they're double-sided, so it's got the text on the other side. It tells you what level the tile is, some text to take an action or something like that, and then what enemies you're going to be facing. We'll talk about all of that a little more later. Then you have the cards. These just represent the heroes that you'll be facing. So there's some generic heroes with different levels on them and stats. And then towards the end here, you've got your elite heroes, the heroes that are more like your named characters. They're much stronger. And then some reminder cards as well. You'll have these set up off to the side of your board, and you'll want them handy because as you explore different tiles, you'll have to pull out different cards in order to represent the party that you're facing off against. Then you have your monster cards. Depending on what monster you choose from, you're going to get 4 ability cards. They're going to be also near your player board, which I'll show you in a second. And this basically shows you these are once per game abilities that you can do in the game, and it tells you how much they cost, 1 through 4. And each hero or monster gets a set of those. And then some more reminder cards, and then a couple of friendly helpers that you may discover throughout the dungeon that are going to help you along your quest there. And then, of course, the player boards themselves. All right, so here we have our player board. There is one for each of the monsters to choose from. There are a few important pieces of information here that we need to know before we get started in our game. So, like I mentioned, each character is going to have 4 special abilities that are once per game, but they also have 2 abilities that they can use multiple times per game. There's no limit to how many times that they can use these abilities on their actual character board. So at the bottom here, we also have a list of our stats. These stats are very, very important to the game. So before you start your dungeon, after you've selected your character, you are going to take one set of the dice. You're going to set your time. This depletes at least 1 every round. But there are things that can happen throughout the game to make it increase and decrease throughout. And this particular dice can never be upgraded. We'll talk about upgrading dice later. So it starts at 20 and then starts ticking down throughout the game. The D4 is set at 1. That's your ability points. So it can never go above 4. You can never upgrade this dice. And if it ever goes below 1, you just move it off the board. And then at the beginning of each round, you gain an ability point. There's also other ways to gain ability points as well. Your other stats here are as follows. So you have might, which is what you will use to go against like the warrior type characters or heroes. You have agility. That's what you're going to use to go against like your rogues and stuff like that. You have magic, which is what you're going to use to go against like the wizards and the sorcerers. And then you have your health. So at the beginning of the game, you have to choose between the rest of the other dice which one your starting points are going to be at. So for example, let's say I wanted my health to be the D12. I would set it at its highest number, which is 12. Maybe I want my agility to be 6, my magic to be 8, and my might to be 10. These can be upgraded. These 4 can be upgraded. So if you ever gain more points to bring your maximum higher than what is showing on the die, then you would switch out the die with another. So for example here, this is a D10. As long as I don't have 2 D12s here, because you can only ever have 2 of one type, I could upgrade this to a D12. That's why I have multiple sets of dice. So I would then upgrade this to D12. Now, if something else were to be upgraded, let's say, I upgraded this to a 10, and then later on throughout the game, I was able to upgrade this again, I could never go above having 2 D12s. So I would just get stuck there. And that has happened to me before. So just keep that in mind. These particular stats, if you ever get down to 0 health, you lose the game. If you ever get down to 0 time, you lose the game. So these 2 particular stats are really, really important. Remember, this can be upgraded, this cannot. Now, these 3 stats here, might, agility, and magic, those are the stats of what you are going to attack with, as well as what's going to be attacked against you. So we'll talk about that a little bit more once we get to combat, but just keep that in mind when you're deciding what your stats are going to be. You're also going to take those little dice that I was talking about earlier. You're going to set them off to the side. These are the experience points. Every time that you defeat a hero, you gain an experience point. So you're going to put one of your dice, assuming you have none, out here on the table to show 1. Whenever it gets to 6, it immediately gets turned to the highest number pip in this line, starting with 1, and gets placed there onto the track. So once I get 6 experience, I gain 1 pip here. Once I gain another 6 experience, I gain 2 pips, etc. And these dice here these pips you can use to increase one of your die rolls in an emergency situation. Let's say you need a 12 to be successful on a check, and you roll, an 11, then you could spend these 2 pips to bring it from an 11 to a 13, which passes the check. Ties in this game do not go in your favor. You always want to beat the number. And that's really everything that you need to know about this board here. I'm going to go ahead and set up for a basic, what they have as the tutorial map. It's actually laid out very nicely inside of the lid of the box, but I'm going to bring the tiles out just to show you guys how it works. So let's go ahead and set up for a game, and I'll explain to you how it plays. Okay, so one thing that I failed to mention when I was talking about setup is once you've determined all of this, and before you start, you actually get one D6 die minion token. And basically what this token does, there's other die minion tokens that you can pick up throughout the map, but what it allows you to do is when you, just like what I was talking about with the experience points here, that you can discard in order to increase your die roll, you can actually turn in one of these tokens to add that particular die to your roll. So like this would add a d6 onto my roll. The other thing that you can do with these tokens is you can discard them to avoid one particular roll of damage. So if you're taking, X amount of damage that you don't want to have to take, you can just discard this token and you don't take that damage anymore. So that's what those tokens allow you to do, and you always start with one d6 die minion with you. Now, I've chosen my stats here based on the map that we're going against, knowing which tokens I'm going to be able to pick up. So the first token that I'm going to be able to pick up here as far as ability tokens go, or stat tokens, is a might. So I'll be able to upgrade this might from a d6 to a d8, which that's why I decided to choose that. And then once I get down here, I can either go with magic or agility. So I just went ahead and put the magic at 8 and the agility at 10, so I could upgrade the magic first and then the agility, giving me the 12 health. In combat, when you're going to take damage, you can either take the damage in health, or you can take the damage by reducing your die stat here from one of these 3. And it always has to be the one that you're taking damage. So if warriors are what's attacking you, then you can either take damage to your health, or you can take damage to your might stat, for example. So that's kind of how that combat works. So let's talk about turns. All right, so on your turn, you do the same number of things, basically, every single time that you run through the turn sequence. So the first thing that happens is you gain an ability point. So remember, at the beginning of the game, you start with 1, so I'm automatically straight up going to go to 2. Then you can take an optional rest. If you want to, you can lose 3 time on your time die up to 3, in order to gain that much health back. So you can take 1 time away for 1 health, 2 for 2, and 3 for 3. After that, you can choose one of your abilities to perform if you wanted to. That's what we use our ability die from. So you have one of these abilities here, or those once per game abilities that I have just off here to the side. This particular monster, he likes to spend his ability tokens or his ability points in order to do this hoarding of the die. So I'm going to spend one of my tokens here in order to do this die hoard. It says place a d6 on this ability, set it to 1. If there's already a die there, increase its value by 1 instead. So every turn, I want to try and increase this up so that I can do this ability later on, which is dice hurl. Roll dice based on your dice hoard, divide the result by 3, and defeat that many non-epic heroes. So it's a good way to do like a big clear if you're going up against a lot of enemies, which we'll see in a second. So after that, you lose 1 time. So I'm going to go down to 19 time. You don't have to use an ability if you don't want to, by the way. But remember, your ability points will accumulate throughout the game, and you can never have more than 4 ability points. So keeping them doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Using them you definitely want to use them. Then you want to choose an unexplored or unflipped tile that is adjacent to any previously flipped over tile. So we have none showing on the map here, so we're going to do this. Show it to you. So this is deadly. It's a level 1 tile. It says if you're hit this combat, lose an additional health. And you're going to face off against these warriors and rogues here, or assassins. So we flip that over. We do what it says, which says if we take a hit this turn, we're going to take an extra point of damage, and then we roll into combat. So it's a level 1, so I want to get my deck of cards here, and I want to pull out a level 1 warrior, and then I want to pull out a level 1 rogue. And this is the party that I will be facing, okay? So the way that combat works is your enemies will always face off against you first. They're going to try and do their hits, and then you can do hits against them. If at this point in time, once the party has been made, you're going to check for multiples. So each hero type has a multiple bonus based on what you go against. I keep calling them warriors, but they're actually fighters. So if I have more than one fighter, for each fighter in the party beyond the first, the hero's might and agility attack rolls gain a +1 damage, or a +1 to their bonus of rolling. So looking here, you always want to keep one of these handy. They're on the back of the character cards, which is really nice. And this is going to help you in order to determine what bonuses the party you're going against meets. So in this particular wave, they don't get any bonuses because there's only 1 and 1. And now they're going to attack starting with the fighter, then going to the assassin, then going to magic. So it's always going to go might, agility, magic. And they're going to add their stats together, and then they're going to roll whatever die that value is maximum of the die roll, and I'll explain what I mean there. So you can use an ability, by the way, before combat starts. So if I wanted to, I could use this, dice hurl if I wanted to, but I don't want to. So might is first, so we add the might together. So this fighter here has a 4, this rogue here has a 2, so their combined might is 6. So the max die that they would get is a D6. Now, if it was a 7, a D6 is not going to get them a 7, so they would get rolled up to an 8. I hope that makes sense. So these guys are going to attack me combined for a D6. So I take an extra D6 here, and I'm rolling against my might stat. So I have a 6. So the only way that it can hit me is if it rolls the max. It always is a success if they roll the max number. So if I roll a 6, even though meeting my 6 would normally not do damage, because they're critting, if you will, by rolling the max number, then it's going to do a point of damage to me. So we roll, it gets a 4, we compare the 4 to the 6. It's not a max hit, so no damage is done to me. Now we go to agility. Same situation here. We have a 4 and a 2, which gives us a 6. So they are looking for a 6 to beat my agility. So again, I have a 10 agility. So the only way that they can deal damage to me is if they crit. They got a 3. No damage is done. Now it's my turn. So I can take any stat that I want. So combined, their lowest stat is a 2. And that's magic, so I'm going to do a magic attack. So I have an 8, so I get a D8. And now I'm going to roll looking for a 3 or better, because remember, matching does nothing. So 3 or better. Wow, I rolled that right off the table. I got a 2. So I completely whiff. Now, if I wanted to, I could spend this to add a 6 in. I'm not going to because it's a little early. If I had some experience, I could also add. I'm not going to. So combat begins again. So now we go back to the beginning. They get might. Here we go. They rolled a 4, nothing. They get agility. They rolled a 3, nothing. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to attack with an 8. I got a 6. So this is a hit because I beat their magic of 2. So now I get to determine which of these 2 I want to destroy. So my might stat is lower or is higher. So I probably want to my might stat is lower than my agility stat. So I probably want to take out the guy that's doing might damage. So I'm going to take out this fighter here. I immediately get 1 experience, and he is destroyed. He gets discarded. Now combat resets. This guy is now attacking me with 4 instead of with 6 because his buddy is dead. So now instead of rolling a d6, he is rolling a d4. And again, this is against agility. I have a 10, so the only way that he can damage me is if he crits and gets a 4, which he doesn't. He rolled a 1. Nothing happens. So now I'm going to attack him again, this time with magic again, because basically I need to roll just anything other than a 1. So I roll, and I got a 1. Look at that. So combat resets. He's going to fight me again with the 4. He rolled a 3, so nothing happens. I'm going to attack him with magic. I got a 2, which is enough to kill him. I get another experience, and this combat is done. I then move on to the empty square that I cleared off because I now cleared that, and that's the end of the round. So then at the beginning of the round again, we would do the same thing. We would reset this, or we would gain an ability point. We would see if we wanted to spend 1. I'd spend 1 to increase this to 2 because that's just the type of abilities that I want to keep doing. My time goes down, so I'm back at 18, or I'm down to 18. And now I would pick another tile here. So this tile here actually gives me a token, and immediately as soon as getting a token, or as soon as picking which tile I'm going to try and go to, I would get the token that's on it. That happens before I even flip it over. So this token is mine. This is actually an ability token. So I can discard this to get 2 ability points, and I can do this immediately. So I'm immediately going to spend that in order to increase my ability points from, I should have had 2 because I started at 1, which is going to bring me from 2 up to 4. Oh, I'm sorry, I spent 1 on that. So I do have 1. I'm going to bring that up to 3. So now I could use this dice hurl if I wanted to. And then we flip over the tile. We have casters. You cannot use might to attack this combat. And this combat is going to be against a, what is that? That's a wizard and a cleric. So clerics don't have their own attacking. They're literally there for support. So I'll show you that really quickly. So we have a wizard and a cleric. So the cleric isn't going to attack. He's just going to buff the wizard. So the wizard is going to get a D8 because his magic combined is 8. So this is how combat would work again. So the wizard gets to go first. I'd be able to use any abilities if I wanted to. I'm going to choose not to. The wizard goes first with a D8. I have an 8, so he needs to roll an 8 in order to do anything to me. He doesn't. Remember, the tile said I can't use might against them, so I'll go ahead and use agility. Agility, I have a D10. So I roll the 10. I need 4 or better, and I got the 4, so I can deal damage. I'm going to deal damage and take out the cleric, which gives me an experience, brings me up to 3 experience. And now combat resets. The wizard gets to go, this time with a D6 against my magic. He needs to crit again. He does not. And I'm going to roll my agility, looking for a 2 or better, which I get, which takes out the wizard and gives me another experience. And that, guys, is how the game plays. In this particular scenario, they want us to explore every tile and then make it to the end. But again, in other configurations of the map, there's going to be different objectives and stuff like that. I rolled really well, and the enemies rolled pretty poorly. actually the very first time that I ever played this tutorial map, I actually lost because the enemy, even though he only needed to get his dice only needed to crit, they were literally critting every single time, and I was down to like 3 health before I was like halfway through the map. So that can happen. The dice can spike, but that's what happens in role-playing games, right? So anyway, that's everything that you need to know in order to play Die in the Dungeon. Die in the Dungeon is a great alternative to long story-driven role-playing games, solo dungeon crawls, etc. I love the flip on playing the monster versus playing the hero. That's a lot of fun. The art and the components for this game are wonderful. Even the tray in the inside of the box, so the inside of the lid is actually this first map that I laid out the tiles for. And then the tray has, everything that you would need in order to store your game really, really well. So a lot of time and energy and thought went into this game, which I really like. And there's lots of replayability between the different monsters that you can play as. There's like 8 different map configurations that kind of tells a story as you go along. Plus, you can build your own dungeon. Plus, the shuffling of the tiles gives you a different experience every time you play. I really, really like that. I don't review a lot of solo games. I don't play a lot of solo games. This game has kind of gotten me excited about solo games again. I have actually, after I got done playing this game and writing my notes and stuff like that, I actually went out and I bought a few more solo games just for myself because this game got me really, really excited about solo play again. And I think it will do the same thing for you. Make sure that you go and check it out. I will leave links to everything in the description below, and definitely show this game some love. I don't think you'll be disappointed by this game at all. What do you guys think of Die in the Dungeon? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you want to see more from the Circle of Nerds, make sure that you check out our Facebook, our Instagram, our TikTok, our YouTube, I don't even remember, Twitter, all that stuff. We have all the social media at Circle of Nerds. Also, don't forget that we have a podcast that comes out every week called The Cosmic Disaster Show. You can find that right here on YouTube or anywhere that you enjoy listening to podcasts. And for an extra bit of love and affection to us here at the Circle of Nerds, please consider checking us out over on Patreon at patreon.com/circleofnerds. Anyway, guys, that's all from me. I'll see you in the next video.